Namaste and welcome viewers. I'm Ashish Pareekh. On the show today, we will be talking about the labour laws and the working conditions in India. Yet again, because the Kerala Chief Minister today has demanded a relook at the existing laws in India, so that there are no more tragic stories like that of the 22-year-old Anna Sebastian, who cleared one of the toughest exams in the country, but then succumbed to work pressure in just a few months. I have a lot to say today, but I'm not going to make this into a rant, but lay down facts and let you form your own opinion on what's happening in India today. In fact, the Work Trend Index of Microsoft India has now revealed that 57% of Indian employees say that they are overworked. A Gallup study says 90% of employees in India suffer from work-related stress. 55% of IT workers in India have reported extreme burnout with symptoms like insomnia, anxiety, and even depression. India is systematically destroying its youth with the toxic hustle culture. And it's not just the IT sector, it's across all professions. But what are we doing about it? On paper, we have a very strict labor law, we have multiple laws, there are fixed working hours, but are these really being followed in India? While countries like Germany and Iceland are piloting 4-day work weeks because of increased productivity and well-being, here in India, 43% of employees are putting in more than the legally mandated 8 hours every single day. And this too, without receiving a proper overtime pay. And to that, work from home phenomenon has also added to the pressure. Employees working from home are expected to be available all day, and this has further made the job tougher. This toxic hustle culture that is being glorified by high-flying CEOs is also physically dangerous. A study by the Indian Heart Association has now found that there has been a 17% rise in heart attacks among professionals under the age of 40. Stress-induced illnesses are also becoming a leading cause of premature deaths in India. The World Health Organization has declared burnout as an occupational phenomenon. But in India, our politicians are asking us to be tough and meditate instead of actually demanding working conditions that are better. We are caught in a cycle where working longer hours is seen as a badge of honor, but all that it does is push employees to the brink for bare minimum benefits while corporations continue to increase their profit margin. This now brings us to the big question: is such a toxic work culture in India really worth it? It might be enjoyable for some, but why should the rest suffer? We'll be discussing this and a lot more, and we'll also be taking your calls on this, understanding your point of view. Let me now introduce our guests for the show. Dinakar Lanka, leader BJP, Dr. Jayaraj B, political analyst, Dr. Sudhir MAA, chairman and MD of Pinnacle Industries, and also Mr. Manik KRA, who's a founder of PinClick. Gentlemen, appreciate you all for joining us on the broadcast here. A very important issue that concerns each and every one of us in different ways. I'll start with Dr. Jayaraj B, political analyst. Dr. Jayaraj, we just heard the Kerala Chief Minister today talk about the labour laws in India and how they need a reform. We looked at the Anna Sebastian death case as well. Do you really think the labour laws in India have matured enough to be able to deal with what's happening? There is a lot of modernization in the way we work today, but are the laws still as archaic as they were many, many years ago?
As we all know, especially in special economic rules, zones, the rules are different. And in this stressful working condition, a lot of work pressure is put on the employers, and there is no strict labor laws. You are punishing the culprits. Here, the sad death of Anna Sebastian is one of the examples that have been recently come out, and many of those end up in resignation from the institution as well. Being a psychologist, I can say that if they want to work in a combat-like situation, why don't they address with a stress tool to the employees? Can they withstand the stress? According to the Hans-Ellis theory, when you get a shock and counter shock, and later you're going to death. That is the general adaptation syndrome theory by Hans-Ellis, and it is applicable in all the industries as well as in IT industry as well. That is why it is high time to revive and to rewrite the current employee rules working in this type of conditions in, I think, in banking sector, in IT sector, and every other sector, even in education sector. I'm coming from an education sector also. So in education sector, people are working to create more work rather than being productive or creative. Or the end result is what? This type of dropout, this type of burnout, this type of sudden demise like deaths and
Exactly.
suicides, and depression and all the other disorders connected with stress and anxiety. And this should be ended, and a proper, discussion
Absolutely.
should be made by the experts on this thing. And if needed, laws to be rewritten. Actually, there are some laws to be. There are laws there. Strict imposition of these laws is more possible because of these special economic zones. There, even the employees are not even allowed to protest for their rights, and a lot of other, uh, what do you call, other type of
Absolutely. Dr. Jayaraj will
squeezing the
get into the
employees.
details of that. What exactly are the issues in India? What the government also needs to do? And before I go to the other panelists, we also have a caller here right now from Mumbai, Mr. Noor Ahmed. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Yeah, good evening.
Right. Good evening, Mr. Noor Ahmed. Go ahead.
You see, we are using human being like a machine. Okay? And you should understand that the staff, the employees is your assets. Your staff is your asset. If your asset is not happy, your company will be never happy. And if you want your company to grow up, you have to make sure that your staff is happy. Don't use them like a sugarcane, just removing each drop of the blood from the sugar, like a sugarcane. For example, like a sugarcane, you must have seen the machine how it works. So afterward, love your staff, take care of your staff, build better foundation.
Right. Right, Mr. Noor Ahmed, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. So clearly the message there, I'll take this point across to Dr. Sudhir Mehta. Our caller here now was just telling us about how employees should be treated as an asset. Do you think the work culture in India also needs a revamp? We are discussing a lot about what the government needs to do, the labor laws and all those things, but also do you think at a human level, at a company level as well, there needs to be a reform as far as the work culture is concerned, especially in India?
Good evening. Let's set this in context. I don't think we need to jump to any conclusions and come to conclusions that all of India is bad or that India follows bad labor practices. That is just simply not true. And I think just to blame everything on the employers does not make any sense. Let's set the issue in context. First of all, the organized sector in India is a very small percentage of the employment sector in India. As you know, it's less than 10%. Secondly, to brand every employer and say that
Right.
every employer is unfair is simply not true. There has to be a balance. First of all, I don't think, let me categorically state, we don't need more laws in India. We already have too many laws. We are a country only of laws. We don't need more laws. What we need is common sense. And it's very simple. Issues like the ones which have come up have solutions. There are many issues, but you can't just take something out of context and say it must apply everywhere. As I have been saying repeatedly, there are situations where people probably have to work more than the assigned hours. Is anybody going to argue that an emergency room surgeon, if a patient comes in, is not going to work and they're simply going to put their work, say after 8 hours, I won't work anymore? It can't happen. Can you say that for the police, which is working 12, 15 hours a day? It can't happen. At the same time, does it mean that somebody has to be worked day in and day out without any laws? Of course not. So you need to have simple, basic common sense, which says that working has to be as per the standards of law. And if somebody is not complying with that, so let the law take its own course. This is not so complicated. We don't need more rules.
All right. We are also being joined by other caller here. Ajay Kohli is joining us from Faridabad. All right. Mr. Ajay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very sorry state of affairs going on in our office. No doubt youngsters are under heavy pressure. What I think is some sort of studies, curriculum should be included while in schools and in colleges, so that at school level, people come to know that we are going to face this in our life. And in the higher classes, there should be some more stress on this, we have to face it. I think that will to some extent that will lessen the burden and stress, and I think this will help a lot. This is my opinion. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ajay, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast, sharing your point of view there. Let me now go across to Dinakar Lanka from the BJP. Mr. Dinakar, you just heard Dr. Sudhir Mehta speak there. He said not every employer has to be blamed. Now, this is the same argument when it comes to rapes as well. I mean, a lot of people come out and say that not every man has to be blamed for a rape.
Oh, come
But
on,
the bigger
Ashish,
question
let's
is,
be
that's
fair
not the
there.
argument that we're looking at. The argument here is that everyone needs to come together to solve an issue rather than say that, well, I'm not doing it, so let me not talk about it. Mr. Dinakar Lanka, what's your opinion on this? What is the Modi Sarkar doing to ensure that young India, Modi talks a lot about younger generation, the youth. What exactly is your government doing to ensure that such things are also taken care of?
As far as the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is concerned, we know that more than 200 labor laws exist prior to 2020. All was simplified and 4 codes were implemented as far as labor law codes are concerned, in which very important one is occupational safety, health and working condition code 2020, in which it is very clearly mentioned how the working conditions should be for safety and security and health measures for the employees are concerned in different categories. Whether it is mines, whether it is labor operating in building and construction, and even contractor workers, and all categories of the employees, how they should be get treated, and employer, what kind of congenial atmosphere shall be created, all those things mentioned very clearly. It is the compliance, as far as the compliance is concerned, it is the responsibility of the companies which operates the business. As per the code which mentioned the provisions, as mentioned the provisions, stringent provisions are there, stringent penalty provisions are there on violations also. Let you observe that Section 6, subsection 1, Clause B of the Occupational Safety, Health and Work Condition Code 2020 very clearly mentions that comply the occupational safety and health measures as the priority. Very clearly mentioned in that section, and in Clause D also very categorically mentioned that provide and maintain
Right,
the working
Mr.
environment.
Dinagar Lanka, we are already running the graphics here on the screens about the rules and regulations. I was just asking you what your government has done to ensure that at least the life of youngsters is good, and of course their workplace pressure also is reduced. Another caller joins us right now, Captain Jaspal from Rohtak. Captain Jaspal, do you think the government has done enough to ensure that the young India, the aspirational population of the nation that's facing so much pressure at workplace, do you think the government has done enough to ensure that their burden is reduced?
Good evening to you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I'm 80-year-old. You see, the employer, the man head at the workplace has to be very firm and considerate. And if he is not, there are institutions where you can go and complain. Now, with the unemployment being so heavy, so high, nobody wants to complain. And the government, in the present setup, all institutions have thoroughly collapsed. They are not giving any support to the complainant. They are with the private firms. They are with the toxic conditions. They are only making the life of the young man hell. Otherwise, there can be a rule. If you overwork, you get 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees per hour. Then, it is the money that makes the mayor go. They can then look after their stress and pain. Very unfortunately, nobody is looking up to the young, and they have got no place to be. Thank you.
All right, Captain Jaspal. Also, before we go to the panelists here, we are getting callers from across the nation. Samir Khan from Srinagar joins us. Right, Samir, go ahead.
Hi. Hello? Hello?
Right, Samir, go ahead. We can hear you.
My call, I just want to ask Dr. Samir, with due respect to him. Hi, Dr. Samir. See, Dr. Sudhir, I believe, Dr. Sudhir Mehta. Yeah, what I'm asking Dr.
Right, go
Sudhir
ahead.
that he he rightly said that we don't need any laws in the country. We have enough of laws. We need a common sense. I think if there would have been a common sense prevailing in our corporate sector, we would have not discussed in this debate. So there is no common sense whatsoever. Because of that, the youth is suffering, the employees are suffering, the late sittings in the offices, which is resulting in, you can say, suicides, anxiety, and depression in the young generation, which are the building blocks of our country. So we need somebody who can engage them. If there would have been a common sense, then the things would have been absolutely normal with the people. But the things are not normal. The corporate world, the corporate employees, they are suffering day in and day out. Either they have a pressure of their business targets, or whatsoever, or the late sittings, or the customer complaints. So ultimately, it's on to the person who is giving the service to the people of India. So I just want him to throw lights on this, what government is doing in this case. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Samir, that's a big question that we're asking right now on the broadcast. Before I go across to Manik KRA, Daniel Joseph from Bandra is joining us. Right, Daniel, go ahead.
Thank you. I think we have to take a great lesson from Anna Sebastian's death. And the pressure has to be built up by the media on the companies. And companies should be taking steps to all the employees who are involved in long duty hours to come and do some sort of counseling to them. Counseling is very much needed. And then only the things can improve. And a regular dialogue should be held with the government to see that the rules are changed. And there should be no chance of employees dying of stress.
Right, Mr. Daniel, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast there, getting across your point of view as well. I'll take this across now to Manik KRA, who continues to be on the broadcast with us. Mr. Manik KRA, you are from a sector where naturally there's a lot of work pressure as well. Where exactly, as a founder, do you draw a line? I mean, it is very important for you to prioritize productivity. Work has to be done, but also at the end of the day, the well-being of employees also has to be prioritized. So, where exactly do you draw the line?
See, I think a couple of things. I, to some extent, agree with what Dr. Sudhir MAA said. I think incidents like this yield into a massive reaction. And, the first outcome of those reactions is to take a myopic view and blame a certain set of audience. And in this case, it's very easy to blame the corporates, the companies. And, to some extent, while it's right, India is a very services-driven economy. Most of the businesses that we do are driven through the people. And, we have to step back and look at how we perceive the working environment that we create, not just for the companies like EY, etc., but overall. We kind of use those Swiggy apps now, and we demand those 2-minute delivery, 5-minute deliveries. That is the kind of working pressure that we as customers put on the delivery boys. It's not Swiggy who has kind of, come up with that concept and enforced us to use that. But we as people kind of use it. And whether it's raining or not raining, we demand those delivery boys to drive fast, bring it up to us quickly.
Absolutely. Manik,
I think all of us...
Sorry to interject you here, but I understand your point of view. As an employer, you say that there are bills that you have to clear, there are paychecks that you have to pass. So there's that pressure. Work also needs to be done as well. But the argument that comes in from various quarters in India is that the productivity increases when there is a hustle culture. But we've seen in other countries as well, wherein there
That I
is
agree,
a
Ashish.
good balance between productivity, which is achieved as well, and also the work pressure. So do you think that is something that's missing in India?
No, that's completely missing in India. I completely agree to that point. I think we as an economy kind of believe that the number of hours and the hustle that we put in drives the productivity, which generally is not the case. You look at, and I've worked in UK in the past, people work for 8 hours, they're highly productive. You don't have to work for 12 hours to do that. And a lot of times, I think it's also a misconception that you sit in for 12 hours and you're productive for 12 hours. I think your physical presence to do work versus your productive presence to do work are two different things. Somewhere, India has been built in a culture where if we spend 12 hours, if we reply to mails at 12 o'clock, if we reply to mails at 11 o'clock, we are thought to be more hardworking than the guys who've spent really 9 to 6 and finished their work and moved on. I think that conception for sure needs to be changed. There has to be a division between what
Absolutely.
your work life and your personal space has to be, and that I think that is also to do with the economy. As we become more and more progressive, it is also a very competitive economy right now. We are a young economy, right? So, and we're coming out of the so-called not so great times. As we come out of it, more prosperity comes in. I think a lot of this will automatically change it. And frankly, if you really step back, that's how the mindset is. It's not just about the corporate world. We see a lot of suicides. We see a lot of stress that is happening in the colleges, right? And there, why are the kids at such young age taking those steps? That's not because of the corporate stress. It is because we as people, put that stress on kids. We make them do so much more than what they should really do. So I think we as people need to really reflect into it and not just start putting the blame game on the corporates.
Okay, I'll take this point across to Dr. Sudhir Mehta. Dr. Sudhir Mehta, like Manik KRA pointed out here, do you think the idea and the definition of productivity in India needs to change? You don't have to sit for 14, 16 hours and work in office. You can do the same amount of work in 8 hours. And do you think that is something that we need to imbibe? The culture, the hustle culture needs to be kept at bay. The productivity should be prioritized in India. Do you think that's the change that we need?
Of course, how can there be any other point of view on this? Productivity, like every sector, needs to continuously improve. But again, I go back to something called a supportive work environment. All of this comes down to an environment which is supportive, where co-workers are supportive, the bosses are supportive, subordinates work with each other, and there is a spirit of cooperation. There will be, as I again and again say, there will be instances where people will be asked or people will maybe needed to work above and beyond their call of duty, but it's not something that needs to be done on a daily basis. And if and when that happens, normally working environment should enable that. The other aspect of this, which we are ignoring, is also the sedentary work environments that we typically have in service center jobs. India has one of the highest instances of cases where people are overweight, where there's not enough exercise, where there is not enough mental relaxation. All of these are areas in which employers can and should do more so that employers eventually have proper exercise. It starts with how they come to the office, how they reach the office, how they go back to their homes. And the whole experience has to be a supportive, positive experience. And again, I say this is not something which can be mandated by law. The laws already exist. We just need to make sure that the environment is supportive and positive so that even in instances where people have to work, they are coming in an atmosphere which is happy. And in the cases where either they have health issues or other issues, obviously those accommodations need to be made.
Absolutely. I'll take this point across to Manik KRA. Manik, I want you to respond to this now. Dr. Sudhir Mehta here clearly says that there are rules and regulations in India and everything is fine. We just need to follow the rules. But the problem here is that everything doesn't seem to be right. For example, there's absolutely no concept pretty much of overtime pay in India. For example, I have a lot of friends working in IT companies and MNCs and they work overtime. Their counterparts in the US or the Germany, when they work overtime, they get paid for it. But in India, the shifts are extended to 14, 16 hours, but there's absolutely no payment. You're working double the amount as your counterpart in the US or the Germany is working, but you're not getting paid for it. And there's absolutely no mechanism to even hold the companies accountable. This is also something that the employers must address? And do you think that's also an issue that needs to be addressed?
Ashish, I think more than the overtime, I think every economy operates on a demand and supply basis. Uh, as I said, we are still a very growing economy. As we reach a certain stage, some of those issues will automatically get sorted. The problem right now is for every guy who wants an overtime, there are 5 guys who are willing to work without an overtime. Right? Again, the government can't enforce it because it's so much more difficult to enforce it. Whereas there are people who are taking those as
Doesn't that amount to
opportunities.
exploitation? It's almost like it's almost like we are saying, okay, you either do what I say, or I've got 5 other guys who are ready to do the job
No,
for a lesser amount. Do you think that again
so
comes into the gambit of exploitation?
So let's look at world as a country in that case, Ashish. We outsource all the work from US at 1/10 the cost. At that time, we never blamed exploitation. Think yourself sitting in US. If there are no boundaries in this world, and the world is one country, then we've already done outsourcing by the same virtue, and India has progressed using that. Philippines is doing that to India today. We are a capitalist world, so I think those are philosophical discussions. Uh, as long as there is a demand supply mismatch, those things will happen. It is very difficult to control that, and I don't blame the government for it because it's virtually impossible for the government to come up with rules with that. I think people are, and you and I and all of the people who are there on this call and outside are the ones who can potentially control it by doing what we should morally be doing. That's what I think. I think morally is where the answers will be found because it's a capitalist world. You can't really put laws to it.
Okay, let's go across to callers now. Srinivas from Mumbai joining us. Mr. Srinivas, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. I just want to start by saying that it is better to put a fence on the top of the hill rather than place an ambulance at the bottom. The reason why I'm telling this is today, many companies, they do a whole lot of wellness programs just as an eyewash to get the social media appreciations and programs. For example, I recently heard one company doing a whole lot of programs or yoga, walkathon, sleep program, happiness program, and things like that. But we actually go and see that not very less than 1% of the employees have been benefited by that. The reason is one program wouldn't work for all. If they do a program targeting body mass index, it may not work for another person whose weight is perfectly normal but is hypertensive. So she or he would need a more different type of program. So this eyewash of these programs will be stopped, and it should be tailor-made individual-specific wellness programs. So I think that's why the strategy of the wellness programs must change in order to see some good results.
All right. Srinivas, appreciate you joining us. And a very important point here that you raised. In fact, I'll take Dr. Sudhir Mehta's reaction to this because Dr. Sudhir Mehta, I recently saw a LinkedIn post by Manik KRA's company about a wellness program. And I'm not linking that to what the caller had to say now. But do you think a lot of these companies do a lot of these programs and a lot of these events and everything? Do you think all of this is just an eyewash, or do you think the employers are genuinely trying to ensure that the employees who come at work, who have such massive pressures, they're also taken care of?
Again, how can you take a one-sided view of a country of 1.4 billion people with thousands of employers? There's great employers, there's good employers, and there's bad employers. I think the good ones do a super job. They are amongst the best in the world. The average employers could do better. And then there's employers which simply don't follow the rules. So what we need to do is to raise the average. And the ones which are not following the rules need to be penalized, and there are mechanisms to be able to do that. I disagree that this is not possible. Certainly, we have labor laws. There are cases where people can take these up in labor courts, etc., etc. As also, there are various mechanisms available. Again, we should not say that all wellness programs are bad. Many companies do an excellent job of creating these programs. The idea is we have to look at each situation differently, and all of us collectively have to improve a situation where work happens, rules are followed, and at the same time, it happens in a manner where people are happy and are able to work under environments which are positive and conducive to work.
All right. In fact, you were also talking about the unorganized sector. I'll take this point across to Dr. Jayaraj. Dr. Jayaraj, like Dr. Sudhir Mehta earlier pointed out, over 90% of Indian workforce is in the unorganized sector. And these are people that you don't really see putting out their opinions, their issues. And these are the ones that are actually affected the most. Politically, what do you think the political class of this country needs to do so that these people whose voices you don't really see on platforms like Twitter or LinkedIn, what needs to be done to ensure that they are also taken care of?
Yes, absolutely. You are absolutely correct. The problem is that whether the companies need, mass production or in the qualitative side as well as the quantitative side. Do they need quality or quantity? Do they need creativity or stagnancy? That is the questions to be asked first to the companies. Like the working hours put in for a company doesn't mean that it is equal to creativity or something, you are finding out something. Otherwise, you doing a glorified clerical work like that Manik KRA has previously said about outsourcing and their work from other countries we are taking in and we are doing things. How can we be more productive? If we want to be more productive and to be more creative, there should be a harmonious work environment in which only creativity can be nurtured. So we should focus on that things, and the employee-friendly attitude from the companies is much needed. Otherwise, this type of stress will happen. This type of depression will happen. Other type of, we always say that a sound mind in a sound body. Without a sound mind, how can be a body will be possible? By doing walkathon or marathon or half marathon or all this PR exercise, they should focus on the mental health of the employees. They need, if their grievances are, they should air their grievances somewhere. If that is the problem, and otherwise, we always say that leadership is the act of delegation. If everything is delegated on the employees and the leader is sitting there and he drawing huge amount of salary at the cost of the employees, these things will happen. And the work should be divided, equally or somewhat. There should be some democratic exercise in this. And these companies doesn't consider about democracy. It is always considering about autocracy, whether the CEO or the CEO or whatever it may be they are called. They are employed, even the managers. Even the managers are in between the employees and the top layer of leadership. These are the things that affect in a work environment in India. And you should have a relaxed environment. You should have a harmonious environment in which people can work in harmony and be more productive and creative. See, that is the real model.
Right.
That is the positive model, rather than sticking on to these hours and hours of working, putting hours into work, rather than being
right. Dr. Jayaraj, we can continue to have this
productive
discussion, but I'm being told by my team that we're running short of time on the broadcast. Mr. Dinakar Lanka, Dr. Jayaraj, Dr. Sudhir Mehta and Manik KRA, I really appreciate you for joining us on this broadcast for this very important discussion. We of course heard the speakers as well, the callers also coming in and voicing their opinion about this issue. And of course, the conclusion here is the fact that all the stakeholders, the employers and the government, everyone needs to come together to really address this issue to ensure that while the companies continue to make profits, increase their profit margin, the employees also continue to enjoy their workplace. The productivity is also high, while the government also continues to increase its forex as well. Appreciate you all for joining us on the broadcast. Viewers, on that note, let's slip into a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.